things were different then. Things were very, very different then than they are now. My age does not make a difference. You see me and you know I'm old, and you can just look at me and know that I have lived a long time. So why do you need to know my age? No, 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 no. Yes, things are much different in America then than they are now. Yes, things are much, much, much different. Maybe it's age, I've lived many years, and maybe I was younger then, and my brain was ripe, um, ripe for memories, you will see. So maybe it's when I look back, I can I visualize my past and the way things were then, and I see it as times were more pure. I guess you can say pure. Not that there wasn't bullshit then. There was plenty of bullshit, and in a way things were worse. But in another way they were just different, okay? Uh you didn't. Okay, here's one thing. You never bought frozen turkeys, okay? There was never a time when I need a turkey, and then you'd go to this. No, that wasn't. You didn't pick out a frozen fucking turkey. What you did was you would go down to Granson Street. Now that's East Granson Street. I don't know what's there now. It's probably a fucking sandwich shop or something, but then it was called Sylvia's. And she was a Hungarian lady. She was very fat, huge, enormous Hungarian lady woman. And you would go in to her shop, and she had a box, like this sectioned off corner of her shop was full of alive turkeys. Okay. And what they did was they just nailed like some boards together, and they crossed off this section of room, and then the fucking turkeys are in that little section, and then you'd walk up and peer over, and then you would look your turkey, and they would be alive, they'd be walking back and forth, and they'd be talking, and they'd be rubbing up and pushing against each other because they were fucking trapped in this box. And then you would look at your turkey, and then you would pick one out, okay? And then Sylvia, this fucking mammoth, behemoth Hungarian woman, she'd come over and she said, "This is the turkey you want?" And you'd say, "Yeah, that's the turkey." And then she'd grab it, and then she'd grab it by the neck, and then she'd walk across this barrel, and she'd drop the fucking turkey inside the barrel, and then she'd put on a lid, but the lid had a hole in it so the turkey's head could stick out of the lid, and it was just a turkey. And then she'd take a fucking machete, and then she'd just fucking lop its head off, And then inside the barrel, the turkey's body would be all rattling around, fucking, it was dying. And it would be just hitting the side of the barrel, just thumping and thumping and thumping. And it would die inside the barrel. Okay. So then she'd grab a mason jar and she'd walk over and she'd take off the lid. And she'd walk over with the mason jar and she'd hold it under the turkey's neck. And she would actually sometimes she would pick up the turkey and stick it under her armpit, okay? You know, the headless turkey, and then she'd squeeze it like an accordion, and it'd just squirt all the blood from the turkey's neck into the mason jar. She'd just squeeze it in there, and then she'd screw on the lid, and then that was for you to keep, because you could make soup with that, or, you know, if you were fucked up, you know, if you were in some kind of crazy voodoo religion, you can use that blood for whatever you wanted. But, you know, I used it for soup. And then she'd give the turkey body to her workers, and they'd go rush it off to the back room, and they'd pluck all the fucking feathers off of it, and then they'd bring it back to you, and then, you know, that was your turkey. You didn't buy frozen fucking turkeys. You didn't go pick out a turkey that was, you know, from Butterball, and you'd say, I want, you know, whatever. You got to know your turkey. You looked them right in the eye, and you would say, I want you fucking dead. And the turkey was oblivious, you know. And then he would just, you know, doing his turkey thing, and then, you know, Sylvie would come and murder him for you. That was one thing that was different, but it's a whole different idea, because you couldn't think about it. You couldn't do that now. Couldn't do that now.